Hi there, Steve Kaufman here. Today I want to talk about grammar. Now, often here at my channel there has been discussion of, the importance of input and the need to de-emphasize grammar instruction when it comes to language learning. And this very often causes a great debate between those people who love grammar and those people who are averse to learning grammar. So I want to talk a little bit about grammar and how it relates now to my most recent language, which is Romanian. And of course, every language we learn is different for us because in each case we either know a related language or don't know a related language. There is common vocabulary with languages that we know or there isn't. So Romanian obviously is very different from Korean or Russian or Czech. Because in Romanian, there's, 3/4 of the words are more or less recognizable as being similar to vocabulary that I already know in other Romance languages. So that makes it very different from learning Korean, Chinese, or Slavic languages. The other thing that's different about Romanian for me this time is that I want to learn it in a hurry because I'm going to be in Romania for 3 days only. And I just want to be able to communicate while I'm there and understand as much as possible. Normally my strategy is to just sit back and let it come at me with the intention of eventually achieving a high level of comprehension in the language and also the ability to communicate with people who have common interests. I don't think that in the 6 weeks that I have I'm going to be able to achieve that in Romanian. So and of course when I started we didn't have a lot of content at Link. So I went and got Pimsleur, as I've talked and explained, and then I went and got Teach Yourself, and I've been using both of those. I also was able to get a hold of a very good grammar book for Romanian. So I want to talk about how I use that book and how it relates to my language learning and what I think is the ideal way to tackle grammar. First of all, I have never said that one should not look at grammar. I have always said that we look at grammar from time to time. We look at the tables, we look at the rules, but we don't expect to learn it. We don't expect to learn the table, at least I don't expect to learn the table when I look at the table. I don't think it's possible to nail down the basics so that then they're solid and then you can just go on and learn words. I find that the grammar sort of drips in bit by bit. Things start to become clearer over time. And as part of the puzzle becomes clearer, some other parts then are more accessible. And it's difficult to predict what's going to be difficult and what's going to be easy. For example, present tense, past tense, it may not be difficult to learn both those things at the same time. But some issues relating to pronouns might be very difficult to grasp for quite a long time. So, what I think is the ideal way to deal with grammar is, first of all, to deal with it in conjunction with a lot of input, so that the grammar explanations relate to something that you already have experience with, or because you have seen these structures and you're now curious. So if you're curious about the whys, why does this happen, you're more likely to be interested and to understand the explanations. If you are hit with these explanations without enough experience with the language, the explanations kind of go over your head. So the first thing is you want to vary the input activities, in my opinion, with the grammar learning. The second thing about grammar is, or the thing that I dislike the most about any grammar book or where grammar is introduced is when they ask you questions. The assumption is because they have taught you something, a structure, a pattern, some rule, that you should be able to reproduce it. That is never my experience. All the grammar rule or the table or the explanation does, it starts to make you aware of something. At least that's my experience. So that when I next read something, oh yeah, it clicks in. Oh, that's that. And so between reading it and experiencing it and reading the rule again and then experiencing it again, slowly these patterns become part of our things that we're able to understand and eventually use. So I don't like being questioned. In Teach Yourself, they have a lot of these questions and drills. They have them on the audio and they have them in the book. I never bother. But what is useful is If they have, questions relating to a specific issue, the future tense or the past tense or whatever it might be, then it is useful to go to the answer section and read the 10 answers, because the answers will all be of the same pattern. So that helps to reinforce that pattern. And so that's the next point about a grammar book. A grammar book should be light on explanation, should have tables, and should have lots of examples. So even if a table is introduced, which is a good reference tool, then you need to have lots of examples of how these tenses are used or how these pronouns are used. And so you read those examples and you reread these examples. And then again, when you encounter other examples of this pattern in your listening and reading, it all starts to click in. So, and I don't like being questioned, because I don't like being forced to reproduce things. That's part of the reason why I'm not normally so keen to speak early. Although, as I'll explain a little later, in the case of Romanian, I am doing that. So I don't like being asked grammar questions. I don't like being asked comprehension questions about a text that I've listened to. I think both of these destroy the pleasure of learning. If you ask me to talk about something that I've read, if I'm reading something on Radio Romania about unemployment in Romania, we can talk about unemployment in Romania. But if you ask me to remember details of the article and to demonstrate that I understood it correctly, well, first of all, I won't remember the details, and second of all, I probably didn't understand it correctly, and it doesn't matter, because by reading the article and listening to audio related to the article, I'm getting exposure to the language. And then with that background, I can go and read my grammar rules and my grammar examples, and it's all this constant reinforcing circle of input, review of the grammar, back to the input, and so forth. One other thing, I say that I normally don't like to speak early because there's no need to, there's no pressure. If I'm learning Russian or Czech, and I'm not going to go there for another year, then I have no great need to start speaking early, because it's difficult to arrange. I'm not going to change my social life just to go out and find Russians or Czechs here in Vancouver to eat with 3 times a week. I can have my discussions on Skype, which is fine, but then that's less portable to me than just listening while I'm in the car. So that my initial period it's not stressful. I just read and listen on my own time, and at some point after 5-6 months or 8 months, then I start speaking. But I can't do that with Romanian, because I'm going to be in Romania in June, and I'll only have 3 days there. So I've decided I'm going to start speaking early. Like I started on Romanian 2 weeks ago. I have now had 2 discussions with a tutor at Link, and I've signed up for more. And of course, it's a real struggle to say anything, but it helps me to notice where my gaps are. I get a report back from my tutor with about 20 phrases that I used incorrectly. I save them. They go into my flashcards. I review them. It's part of my learning process. And of course, with Romanian, I can do it, because even now, if I read, if I look at what I'm doing, I'm reviewing those phrases that I had recorded for me, some other content that has now come into our library at Link. But the biggest part of what I'm doing is I am reading news articles from Radio Romania, and then listening to the news reports. Now, they're not transcripts, but a lot of the vocabulary repeats. And so my ability to understand the written article is very high, because there's so much common vocabulary. My ability to understand the news report, the discussions or whatever, is of course much, much lower. But I'm doing a lot of that to get exposed to the language, and between that and having listened to the patterns, when I speak to my tutor, and if my tutor is patient and asks me questions, we can actually get going in a conversation with a lot of difficulty. So, there you have it. Grammar is important. It should not be the focus. There should never be an assumption, because a grammar rule is taught, that the student should therefore be able to reproduce it, answer it correctly on tests or quizzes. None of that, I don't think. I mean, if you look at what happens in Canada, where they teach French in the school system, they test them every year. The kids, most of them pass the French test, and at the end of it, they can't speak. So I'm not a fan of testing people on grammar at all. You need brief explanations, tables, and lots of examples. And the understanding is that the person looks at the grammar, reviews the grammar, with not the intention of learning it or remembering it, but as a part of the process of becoming aware of how the language works. And that this visiting the grammar rules and tables and seeing those examples, and then again seeing those same patterns in meaningful contexts, all is part of that gradual process of getting used to how the language works. So there you have it, a bit of a discussion on grammar as it relates to my latest adventure with Romanian. And I will be getting back to Korean when I come back from Romania, because it is on my list and I definitely want to achieve a decent level in Korean. So thank you for listening. Bye for now.